Also on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Wang Yi called for support from all relevant parties of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Wang Yi made the call at a multilateral meeting with his counterparts of the US, Britain, France, Russia, Germany and Iran at the UN headquarters. Wang Yi said the deal has helped defuse the Iran nuclear crisis and bolster the international non-proliferation regime with the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons as its bedrock. Wang Yi also said the deal is an important outcome of international security governance and a beneficial practice of resolving international hotspot issues through political and diplomatic means. Well, joining me now in studio is Professor Macharia Munene, an international relations expert and lecturer at the United States International University here in Nairobi. Professor, thank you very much for joining us here on Africa Live. First of all, what is your reaction to Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's speech at the UN General Assembly?
A very positive speech in terms of calling for sobriety, because there are a lot of areas which are increasing tension, especially the neighborhood, North Korea. And the Americans, they need to calm down a little bit and be sober. And so calling for dialogue, diplomatic effort is a very encouraging thing. He talked about the Iran issue, the deal that was cut with the big powers, that it should be respected, not just one country waking up one morning and say, I don't like it, when many countries were involved in negotiating that particular treaty. So generally his tone was to call for global sobriety, reduce the tensions so that no accident will come, because the last thing you want is accidental nuclear exchanges, and that can happen if there is no sobriety, if somebody is not calling for common sense. So just cool down.
Right, so China is calling for diplomacy, and when it comes to the DPRK activity there, what would you think? What do you think China's role should be in easing the tensions there?
Well, it should be primary, because North Korea is a neighbor. And if anything wrong goes in North Korea, then China is directly affected. So this is not a hypothetical situation. It is a real danger. So its role is to encourage both sides to be more reasonable, to consider the dangers of escalating instead of de-escalating. So it has a primary interest, and it has linkage with both sides, particularly the United States, and it has linkage with North Korea. So it can play the mediation role. So just cool down, let's talk about these things. Now, what is coming up is that eventually most countries will have to accept the fact that North Korea is a nuclear power. And how far do you want to test whether it can act? And nuclear weapons are things you don't want to experiment with. And and it's not, what we are noticing is not something that is totally strange in terms of nuclear diplomacy. When the United States was the only power in the world with the nuclear capacity, it tried as much as possible to keep others out. And then that did not work because the Russians got theirs. Then you had the British and the French and the Chinese, the Indian, and so the proliferation of nuclear capacity has been very difficult to contain. And once a country becomes one, then there is a limit as to how far you can push it.
So one of the other issues that's coming up at the Assembly is the proposed reforms when dealing with peacekeeping missions. Africa, of course, has a large percentage of peacekeepers on the continent, though. Are proposals by the Secretary General, though, up to speed, or what more could be done to improve the peacekeeping operations, particularly on the continent?
Well, there are challenges with UN peacekeeping operations in Africa. There have been several accusations of malpractice. There have been questions of effectiveness. So there is need for reform and to make the UN peacekeepers more effective in delivering. The personnel being trained, being sent someplace, are they properly trained to acclimatize themselves with the place they are going? Because these are some of the challenges that have been coming up. It is also true that not all member countries contribute their share in running these things. So sometimes it appears if it's a burden on one instead of the everybody. So there is need for reforms to be put into place, to be well thought out, and the starting point with the Secretary General is to lead the way. And that's what he's trying to do, lead the way. And then the others will probably follow, and then make UN peacekeeping forces more effective than they are.
All right, Professor Macharia Munene, we'll leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us on the program.